I'll think of it. We had a big contract with them because they had in the little region that Kansas City was the center of, they had 125 cities in this one region, and they would get together and purchase services in bulk. So they had a planning department, like 30 cities, and we managed that department. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and get started because I talk on and on and on, and I'll be here all afternoon if I don't just kick it off. So appreciate everybody being here. I was just sharing with a few of you. My name is, I'm the Director of Local Government Services for MRB Group, and I do a ton of work with the town. Me personally, I do a ton of work with the town on the economic and community development side. MRB Group serves in a plan role with the town, and we have for a really long time. I'm a huge fan of housing and a passionate believer in affordable housing. Oh, Greg. Hey, Greg. See Greg West. It's good news. That won't make me nervous at all. So one of the things I know about housing intuitively, I've spent about 25 years in local government. And the biggest chunk of that time was in one community just off to our east. And Geneva has its own affordable housing story. And if you've been around for a while, you probably have at least an impression of Geneva and the demographics there and the challenges that the city faces. I can tell you, having worked in probably about 50 communities around the country, everybody is talking about housing, and everybody is working on particularly on affordable housing issues. And there's a reason that everybody's talking about housing. People are starting to think critically about affordable housing. So this is something that we call the virtuous cycle. And the virtuous cycle basically says, when I walk into a community with community development, they ask me one of a couple questions. One, how do we get money to develop new great amenities for our community? MRB Group does a ton of grant work, and that's the first thing they want to know. What about grants? Can we get grants, or how do we develop new public amenities? And I say, why? And they say, well, because we want to attract residents. We want to bring people here. And I say, why? And they say, well, because we want people to think of us as a great place. We want people to have confidence in our market. We need more revenue. So people call for all four of these questions, and the answer is they're all linked, right? You need really strong, healthy neighborhoods. Strong, healthy neighborhoods, and to me, a strong, healthy neighborhood, an opportunity for anyone who wants to live in your community to live in your community, right? That there is access to housing across a wide range of price points, that integrated. We just had a great presentation on form-based code and on Uptown Canandaigua in particular. That development is integrated. It's thoughtfully integrated with transportation to make sure that public amenities and transportation are suited to the neighborhood where folks are. And I think a healthy, diverse, and accessible housing stock has a different typology that's attractive to all ages, abilities, and resource levels. And so if you've got strong, healthy neighborhoods, an attractive place for people to move. More housing, more strong, healthy neighborhoods typically means more revenue for your community. Doug, if you weren't in the last session, Doug was talking about Uptown Canandaigua being a $4 to $5 million assessment increase, right? And even at only $1 per thousand, or wherever the Canandaigua tax rate lands, that's significant new local revenue to create public amenities, which creates confidence in your market, attracts things like higher, or like a diverse set of businesses, retail, restaurants, those types of things that make more people want to live here, that generate more dollars for better public amenities. And this wheel just keeps on grinding. This virtuous cycle keeps on turning. So depending upon who you ask, different community development professionals will pick different points on this cycle to say, here's where you should start. Here's the one place you can't start, right? You can't start with confidence in your market. But they'll tell you, you gotta get one of these working right to get this wheel turning, right? To get this virtuous cycle turning. And for me, I tend to put all of my eggs in the house. If we can get housing and neighborhoods right, then the rest of this stuff just follows right along, right? And so after watching communities struggle for years and years and years with affordable housing, I really started studying with housing generally, but particularly housing. I really started studying and trying to understand what were the levers in the market that local government can pull to make affordable housing a reality. And I call it the 3 C's. And a bunch of the people in this room have responsibility for all 3 of these C's. The 3 C's are certainty, certainty, and certainty. Okay. Back to the virtuous cycle. One of the only things you can control relative to confidence in your market is certainty. Developers trade on risk, and developers are looking for low risk, high yield investments. Every developer is. The developer of the Walmart, the developer of Canada with that gorgeous building, and the developer of an affordable housing tract are all looking for low risk, higher yield development. The only thing you can control in the marketplace is certainty. And so planning board member, a zoning board member, a town board member, someone who has some regulatory responsibility inside of the local marketplace, you're going to have to create certainty. There's another reason to create certainty. Developer, investor, these words, they create a feeling in your belly one way or the other, right? Me and Doug, we get a nice warm feeling when we hear developer. That feels good to us. Something's coming, something good's coming our way. But there are just as nice of people out there who get a little sour in the belly. The word developer. And that's because developers come in all shapes and sizes and with all levels of scruples, etc. And the mythical benevolent developer, the developer who really is in it, the community a better place, trades on her name. She trades on her reputation. And she doesn't want to come into a community and step in the muck, right? She doesn't want to walk into a bunch of controversy in a community. For looking for pictures to put in here, and there's one I decided not to use, but you've all seen it. It's the one with the what was the name of the Canandaigua Shores, with the sign, no Canandaigua Shores. That's something the developer don't want to know about. They want to be now. There's a whole those people are holding those signs, and some of you might have carried them yourselves if you saw the original drawings, but that's the kind of controversy that a benevolent developer will walk all the way around, right? Or any level right down from a benevolent developer. In order to create certainty, in order to create confidence in the market to the degree that you can, you need a couple of things. Clear, concise codes, right? More C's. Clear, concise codes. Say what you mean. When we look at code language, we think about, or I think about clarity and performance, right? I understand it when I read it. When I look at the language, I know what the community is looking for. And 2, when the planning board or zoning board executes on the language, the project that spits out at the end is the one I envisioned when I wrote the code. So clear, concise code language, easy to follow, understandable by diversity of experience, right? Because right now, in Uptown Canandaigua, as an example, there are a couple of developers up there, a couple of landowners, I should say, who've owned that property for a generation or more, right? 100 years. They're thinking now, hey, maybe I'll get in the development game. They've got limited experience in land development. They've been car dealers and other farmers and other folks up there for 100 years. We want them to do, but they're going to get lost in complex language, right? So clear, concise code language. That'll provide consistency to developers. Establishing a single point of contact, a clear path to the development process. I want to know a person in town hall that I can talk to who's going to understand how I get my project from A to Z. And so when we're talking particularly to folks who we want to develop the product we want, in this case, affordable housing, I want codes that are going to spit out affordable housing and a town hall who can answer all of my questions to move the project across the finish line. And then there's some administrative things that we can do to make the process easier for any type of development. These are rules that apply to every type of development. We'll dig into housing in just a moment, but anytime we're inspire confidence in the market for any piece of the market, certainty, certainty, certainty. That's what we're after. And balance, right? Doug said something in the last session which was inspirational to me. Board members in the room and said, you are empowered to say no. What you say no to is as important as what you say yes to. I've worked in communities that are so hungry for development, just any development. You just bring it to me. I need it. I need it. A community working in right now, we're doing a comprehensive plan for them. And we're in comprehensive plan steering committee meetings, and they're literally screaming at each other over the family dollar or the Dollar General, right? The Dollar General's coming to town. That's development, right? We need it. I don't care what it looks like, where it goes, as long as it's in the village limits. That's what I want to see. You don't have that problem. You don't have that problem, okay? You have market forces at work that are a wind at your back in Canandaigua. You have a set of town leaders here who are going to stand behind you when you make challenging decisions. That's critical. So you want affordable housing, you can taste it. You can taste it. A developer knows when you can taste it. An unscrupulous developer really knows when you can taste it. And they're going to try to foist something on you that you don't want. And so we're not talking about affordable housing or any other development product over and above anything else. It's balance, right? Balance is critical. And so our balance, you find your balance in the comprehensive plan. You don't know it. If everybody here working, I know at least one person's not working with the town of Canandaigua. Anybody else here not working with the town of Canandaigua on a different zoning board? At least I know. Yeah, that's okay. No shame, no shame. But make sure that if your community has a comprehensive plan that's been written or updated in the last 5 or 10 years, read it. My dream as a community planner or city manager was walk into a planning board meeting and all the planning board members would have a copy of the comprehensive plan under their arm. And they'd sit down, and every time someone would bring a project to them, they'd thumb to their heavily tabbed indexed copy of the comprehensive plan and turn to the part of the plan that applied to this particular project. But understand it yourselves, right? Know your comprehensive plan inside and out. If you don't have a comprehensive plan, particularly one that's been updated in the last 5 or 10 years, go to your town leaders. They don't need this is the part we'll have to mute for in case any MRB folks dial in. You'll need a consultant. About hiring a consultant, just sit with your town leadership, ask your town leadership to get together and explain to you what their vision is for the future. We want a unified, concrete vision on where the town is headed before we start seeing projects, right? If you don't, what's the Yogi Berra line? If you don't know where you're going, you're bound to get there, all right? And so, so review your comprehensive plan regularly. Make sure that you and your other planning zoning board members understand it, know it, understand, and be ready to roll. Communicate them consistently and widely so that developers understand what you're after, right? Brand it on everything. If you got a vision statement, brand it so that when the developer walks in, they can clearly see that their project aligns or doesn't align with your vision. And then use those vision and values for every project. Use them as a measuring stick, a scorecard for every project. And again, these are things that we deal with every type of development, but affordable housing, housing generally, no different. Don't accept an affordable housing project because you need affordable housing, and whatever the product is, I'll take it. I'll take it. I got into a difficult conversation with an architect who was proposing a set of affordable housing products. They were going to develop 6 units, and they were developing them in the wrong place. They were going to be first-time home buyer, low-income, single-family home units. And they found a tract of property immediately next to a federally subsidized housing project in an industrial park. And so I said, that's in the wrong place. We're creating clusters of poverty, which I don't. Let's find a different place for it. And secondly, and I'm not being disingenuous when I say, man, I always pick the drive. I'm not an architect and guy because that was the house, right? It was a cracker box. And I made an offhand remark about it. Like, wow, can't we do better than this architect? No front porch, no back porch. Slab on grade, walk in, step up, white, black shutters of them sitting pretty in a row. I said, we can't have it. You know, it's clear what's going on here. And he said, man, I donated my time. And I quickly, this was before I had reservation and pause to make bold statements. I said, well, if I donated a dumpster full of garbage, I wouldn't expect a big thank you for it. And that's what I feel like I might have gotten in this design. Because I don't want affordable housing at all costs. I want affordable housing that's going to be functional, that's going to be in a healthy neighborhood, that's going to produce the result that I'm looking for in my community, which is to create pride and safe, affordable spaces for folks to live. And that wasn't going to happen in those 6 cracker boxes. So just like developers, right? Developer gives everybody a certain feeling in their belly. Affordable housing does the same thing. When you saw affordable housing on the agenda today, you had a reaction. And some of you had a very positive reaction. Some of you may have just had a question. Wow, let's hear what this guy's all about. This sounds weird. There are people certainly who say, I don't want affordable housing in my neighborhood. It's like most things. In theory, I understand why it's necessary and why it's needed, and I feel passionate that everyone should have a safe, affordable place to live, but not right there, or there, or back there, right? So it does evoke a lot of passion in folks, but that's because the definitions are so wide-ranging. And I'll use our work here in the town as an example. A couple of the folks in this room are on this affordable housing task force alongside me. And one of the things I asked the task force to do was, we got to prioritize. We got to think of this housing nugget is so big. This housing problem, the housing challenge we face is so big and so complex that the affordable housing is so wide-ranging that we couldn't possibly tackle all of it at once. So let's talk about what we really mean when we say affordable housing. A lot of politicians I know have tried to find a way to get around by using terms like workforce housing or attainable housing, right? These are all things that are supposed to make us feel better than affordable housing, because affordable housing has a brand with it in a lot of ways. I don't care what you call it. The definition or the name of it is important than the definition. For me, it always comes down to who is it that we're trying to serve? And there is no wrong answer. It's a community values conversation. So we're going to pick up our well-worn, tattered copy of our comp plan. Many times the pages are starting to fray. We're going to turn to the vision statement. We're going to read the vision statement, understand what the vision statement's all about,
And then maybe there's a section on housing there, and that's going to tell us. What I hope it tells you is that this segment of the market is what's lacking in our community. The section of folks in the world who are not served by the Canandaigua market or by your community's market in some way. But that's not enough, right? Because we're still local government. There's only so much we can do. So when we're putting effort, we're saying which segment of the market can be best moved by government intervention, right? So if I'm trying to serve the very low income individual, right? Man, where was I the other day? Where there was some significant portion of the population. It's like this community I was working in, 15% of the people in the community earned, these are wage earners, earned less than $20,000 a year. 15% of the community. If I'm trying to people as a town government with limited town government type powers, I'm pushing a boulder up a hill. It doesn't make any sense for me to get involved in that way. But what segment of the market will require the most local government intervention that's attainable? What tool to my own board? So there are planning board members in here. We can't ask planning board members to do town board member jobs. And we can't ask town board members to do planning board member jobs, right? We can ask Doug to do anything because he's a town manager. He's supposed to do everything. But town board members got a set of jobs. Planning board members got a. So what tools are available to your board that will allow you to influence the market? And then what information do you need to help you start making decisions? Right? Those are questions that will help you prioritize. So in terms of defining of housing we're trying to support here, I think about housing generally on a spectrum. And on this side of the spectrum is something that's wholly subsidized, a product that could not be developed but for the government itself. So don't pay attention to local. I'm talking about Uncle Sam, the government has to make this product happen. All the way out to here, no government intervention would be required. Market rate, that means the market is taking care and there's no government intervention. Well, everywhere in between, there's a bunch of ways that the government can be involved in supporting affordable housing. And there's a bunch of ways that you can be involved particularly. So on this end, all this wholly subsidized. And my friend Andy Timon, who's the executive director of the Geneva Housing Authority, he hates the word wholly subsidized because he'll tell you, and he's right, that there aren't very many, if any, truly wholly subsidized products out there. When I am saying this, I'm thinking, picture in your head, 1970s Chicago, big brick housing projects, right? Even those housing projects have a sliding scale, right? They want to see how, even through benefits programs, and they're going to ask you to pay a portion of your earnings in rents. But for all intents and purposes, we call this wholly subsidized housing. If your town wants wholly subsidized housing or very heavily subsidized housing, there are only certain things that a town government could do, and there are only really tight things that a planning or zoning board can do. Advocacy. That's one thing that the town board can do. The town board can go to Assemblyman Gallahan. They can go to Senator Hellman. They can go to our federal legislators and say, we're in dire need of affordable housing, and we're in dire need of service to very low income individuals. And that's about as far as they can go. Right? Empowered to write checks for this kind of thing. Town law restricts what types of things the town can invest in. So advocacy is just about the edge of where they can be. Zoning and development regulations, right? So you want to make sure the development if you're looking for this type of housing, this wholly subsidized type of housing, that the development regulations that you've put in place will support that type of development. Remember, clarity and result. The result of zoning code is that wholly subsidized housing is easy to develop. There are other housing products, though, where investors step in and the investors are subsidized to create housing. These products can be the same in some cases. These are maybe smaller, and you have a couple of these, or at least one in the town that I'm thinking of, Creekside. Creekside is something where I would classify, or Creekview, I'm sorry, I would classify as an owner subsidy product. These are typically multifamily clustered residences, and they've received typically a federal and or state housing tax credit that make their financing work. And so they receive credits against their income tax to finance housing that's available to low or very low income individuals. Now, low, very low, moderate, these are all terms that HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is a federal agency, and the Office of Community Renewal, which is the state housing agency, low, moderate income, very low income, indexes against the regional average, right? So we have area median income, and depending upon how far below area median income you fall, makes you eligible to live in one of these housing projects. Similarly, you can advocate, the town can, planning and zoning boards can make sure that the zoning code and the development regulations are such that they will produce a product that owner subsidized units could go into. And the town can also apply for grants to support these owner subsidized housing. They can support low income housing tax credits. They can support direct to owner grants from USDA, which is Department of Agriculture, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or at the state, the Office of Community Renewal. So those are owner subsidized affordable housing products. Occupant subsidies are becoming more common. In occupant subsidies, the person who's going to live in the house gets some type of assistance to support them moving into the house. So we've got a home for rent on your block. The rent is $1,000. One of the county agencies says, based on your income, we're going to give you $800 towards that rent. You take your $800 voucher and $200 in cash every month and hand it to the landlord, and you're typically renting a home that's good. Still has to be zoned appropriately. You still have to establish that the development regulations will permit what are typically relatively higher density residential living situations that where owners would feel comfortable renting in that environment. The town's going to have to continue to be open to and advocate for county subsidy or state subsidy to people in the region. And your supervisor from your particular would do that at the Board of Supervisors level. The county manages through the Department of Social Services a rent voucher program. The Geneva Housing Authority, on behalf of Ontario County, manages the Section 8 program. So these are managed programs that your town leadership can advocate. Hey, we're not seeing enough vouchers out this way. Our folks need support as well. In terms of the actual development, though, it looks like any other residential development. Any of these residences would be allowable recipients of a Section 8 or DSS voucher. And then the last piece, that as we get closer to market rate, are what I call targeted populations. This is us identifying a particular piece of the community or a particular segment of the that we're working to retain. So the most popular one, bar none, everywhere I go, people are talking about the ability or inability to retain seniors. People are starting to retire. They're looking home. You went the opposite direction of a lot of the seniors that I've talked, not calling you a senior, but of retired people, of folks who retired. Most of the people I talked to who retired, she was just sharing with us earlier that they moved to larger land when they retired. Most of the retirees that we talk to are saying, I want no maintenance, I want no responsibility, I want smaller units, single level living.
Oh, we may get there.
And because of all of that, we have a limit of products that are currently available. We saw a stat too. That was like the number of, or the average age of home in the town of Canandaigua was pretty significant. A lot of older housing stock. When you get into the city, we're really older, 50s and 60s, 40s, and earlier in some cases. I used to say in the city of Geneva, we don't have 4,500 homes. We have one home 4,500 times. It's 2 stories tall. It was built in 1910. Bedrooms on the 2nd floor, laundries in the basement. Retain seniors that way. Can't retain seniors that way. And so we have to find a way to develop products that will retain seniors. Doug and I just met with Pactiv last month, and we asked, what can we do to retain you? And they said, we got to find a place for our people to live. We got to find homes for our workforce to live in. We're having a hard time attracting people. They're literally busing people in from Rochester to work in Canandaigua. And they're not alone. There's virtually every industry now is talking about workforce availability. Firms follow workforce follows community, right? So you have to be able to have conversations with developers who are targeting these specific populations if you've got that level of interest. That takes advocacy in a different way. The advocacy that the town is going to have to engage in is they're going to have to empower the town manager and others to work on their behalf in an economic development capacity, working with developers to showcase why Canandaigua is an age-friendly community, as an example, or a workforce-friendly community. Why a developer would very quickly fill the units that they're looking to fill. Zoning and development regulations, same thing. If we're going to attract seniors, we need to make sure we're going to develop the units that seniors are able to live in. Because if your zoning code said, ever had to be 2 stories, you wouldn't get a lot of seniors. If your zoning code said that, one of the projects that Doug's been looking at with the town is multiple single family units on a single piece of property. Owner of the property retains ownership and maintenance responsibility and so that the folks living in the houses don't have all of that responsibility. That's not available under a Euclidean or under a traditional zoning law, or it might not be, depending upon how you wrote it. So you need to make sure your development regulations allow for the types of conditions that are going to enable retention of seniors that will remain attractive to the workforce. We know, for example, that live, work, play, feel, mixed use development. Those are the types of things that a lot of the workforce we're trying to attract have interest in. So you got to define where you're going. Who are we trying to serve? Are we trying to serve the lowest income individuals in our community? Do we see that as a town responsibility? Do we see that as something that the town of Canandaigua government is capable of managing? Or are we trying to dig in somewhere along the way? Are we just interested in, and when I say just interested in, have we determined that resources can be most effective in retaining seniors, in retaining the workforce? Where do we want to dig into the affordable housing pot? The point of this very busy slide is you have to pick a place on this spectrum and work it. You can't work the whole spectrum. You don't have the resources, you don't have the time, you'll spin your wheels. So in terms of supporting housing, I always say the planning and zoning boards are responsible for setting the table. You're responsible for being the type of, do we have some familiar faces on this slide? You're responsible for creating the type of regulatory environment or of development review environment that will attract those developers who we feel are going to do the best job in serving our affordable housing roles. And so your job is to advance the vision of your community while protecting community character, right? Those are critical roles for our planning and zoning board. The tools you have to do that are, you can't pass a code. So what municipalities do, writing a zoning code can be expensive. Everybody gets a 10% off coupon on the way out today for zoning code update, but it can be expensive. A town like Canandaigua for a town-wide zoning code update could be $100,000 or more. And we're working at MRB is on a team that's rewriting the city of Greenville, South Carolina's zoning. $1.3 million zoning update in the city of Greenville, South Carolina. So governments invest heavily, just like we do in infrastructure. We're going to build a water treatment plant. And then I'm going to come back at budget time and say, okay, well, budgeting about, $250,000 a year for preventative maintenance on this $15 million treatment plant. And that means we probably should be raising water rates about 2.5% every year. And I get kicked out of the room because they say, we just put $15 million. It's brand new. We don't have to worry about that right now. We'll get to that maintenance stuff when things start to break. Zoning code is the exact same thing. Zoning code starts going out of date 5 seconds after the supervisor's gavel falls. When it says all in favor, aye, so moved, bang. Somewhere, probably in California, there's some kooky urban planner who's developing a product that you've never heard of and that now runs conflicting to your zoning code. And if you wait, save up another $100,000 to rewrite your entire zoning code, it's going to be out of date in no time. So what I encourage communities to do is consistently, constantly be reviewing their codes. Develop some way to do it quarterly. We're going to do a package of these codes every quarter. Updates happen in real time, on the fly, that we're constantly maintaining this code, right? Not just waiting for the big shoe to drop.
Hey, Matt, can I just say,
Yeah.
just speaking of that, and for those of you that were on our last one on form, just kind of listening to you, you're so spot on with that. We probably have, I'd have to figure it out, but I bet you we have every bit of $500,000 in our form-based code invested over the last 5 years between the grants that we received and writing, the time and everything else. So when developer X comes along, well, we really want to do this and it doesn't match up with that form-based code. It's like, well, there went all that. So
yeah.
But you're absolutely right.
So it's, really super progressive communities with 10 planners on staff. They bring, there's a data month. Every month they bring a new package for the planning board to be looking at, and so that thing is constantly cycling. Make a note if you're not going to do that, which if you did that, it wouldn't surprise me because Canandaigua was super progressive anyway. But if you just can't do that, make your own notes. Here came a project that really gave us trouble, that really banged up against the zoning code. I'll make a note of it. I'll pass it to Shauna, and Shauna will have this, stack of these are the issues that we need to be looking at. But don't just say, well, nope, doesn't mean, and boom, and we move on because it's a busy night. We want to make sure we're thinking about why it doesn't and how that grinds up against our vision. And then, when you're evaluating projects for compliance, think about again, you have limited tools. I get it. You're sometimes you're limited into the reason you can say no. But think about how a project in front of you aligns with your housing strategy and aligns with your vision. And I'm not a lawyer, but I'm getting ready to play here for just 40 seconds. But if you ever get stuck where your zoning code is clear that this might, or where there's mud, but there's enough mud for the developer to slip through a product that you don't like, and you're looking for a reason or a way, I should say, to say this just doesn't meet, this doesn't match. I know what the code sort of says, but it just doesn't match with our zoning code or with our housing strategy or our adopted comprehensive plan vision. seeker is like the army. You always have seeker, and there's a question in seeker that says, does this project align with community strategies and comprehensive plans and the like? And if you say no to that, that triggers a whole bunch of other responsibilities for the developer. And if you've got a zoning code that's a little out of date and it's starting to pull apart from your housing strategy pretty good and your comprehensive plan pretty good, if you've adopted a comprehensive plan more recently than your zoning update, which almost always happens, then have your attorney look at seeker. This isn't lining up with our comprehensive plan. Our zoning code is stale here, and we want to be able to say yes or no to this. This is a hard one, right? And Doug did a great job in the form-based code presentation of explaining how Uptown ended up. But just the simple math on this is density equals affordability. The end. I mean, that's just the simple math on it. The more units a developer can put in a given space, the more cost effectively they can be delivered. And so in your community, if you're looking to develop affordable housing, it doesn't have to be 4 stories, 50-foot tall building, covered with zero setbacks all the way around. But if you can go to 4 per acre from 3 per acre or 5 per acre, and you're not all the way out here in pure green, corn growing country, think about it. Think about where you can densify, because that is where you're going to get your best shot at affordability. Doug walked in just in time. I should have hit this slide while he was out in the hallway. But incentive zoning is a tool that local governments can use to get some public benefit where your zoning code where it's warranted in alignment with your comprehensive plan or other community vision. You can create an ordinance that says in these areas, now for the purposes of our conversation today, in this area, we say it's 4 units per acre, but we're willing to go to 6 units per acre if the additional 2 units are made available to folks making 70% or less of area median income. Right? Incentive zoning around the region for other purposes. I don't know of a community today that's using it for affordable housing in our region. We use it in other communities to say, yeah, we're allowing 4 units per acre, but we'll go to 6 if you'll put sidewalks all this block, or if you'll install and maintain street lighting, or if you'll build a community park here and deed it to the town, or better yet, maintain it forever in perpetuity on your own as a yeah, sure.
A couple times today, people have made incentive zoning. I am not a fan of incentive zoning, and here's why. We spend all this work on comp plans. We spend all this work on zoning updates and everything else to lay out a plan. And what Matt's saying is absolutely correct. In the purest sense, he's absolutely right. But more often than not, what happens is we do things like the agricultural plan, the form-based code, and everything that we talked about earlier. And then instead of the area that Matt just pointed out, they want to plop it in the middle of housing development, in the middle of our agriculture enhancement plan. And they say, if you rezone this to incentive zoning, we will put a housing development here for you. And so that in necessarily want it, right? So it's not a bad tool. It's a tool in the toolbox, but what I see more often than not is incentive zoning is not used in accordance with your own comprehensive plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're already unhooked if you're not using it in alignment with the but if I were to say we'll allow density bonuses on any property within a 1/4 mile radius of an elementary school, that makes sense, right? We want density around schools. We want ability around schools in neighborhoods where there's existing water and sewer and sidewalks and blah blah blah. So none of this, nothing I'll say outside of the comprehensive plan slide substitutes for the comprehensive plan. It has to be done in conjunction with all of your other planning tools. And then again, one of the easier things for you all to control, it's just things move so fast that we hardly ever have time to stop for a minute, is just making sure that the administration of your codes is fine-tuned. If you need 1967 zoning, you ought to see the poor city of Geneva is going through a zoning update right now, so good for them. But before their zoning update or their current zoning map, it looks like one of those jigsaw puzzles that my grandma used to love to do. Like there's 10,000 pieces, they're all each other. There's no possible way to know what up from down because we just turned the box over and there's a bunch of pieces on the ground. It's what's happened is over the years, somebody's come in and said, I'd really love to put something here. And well, that is a good idea, just the zoning doesn't allow for it. So we'll duck on the edge of this zoning map and we'll stick this over here. And it's happened over time. That happens. So if you got that crummy, nasty jigsaw puzzle zoning map, it's fine. You don't if you're in Canandaigua, but if you did, it's fine. Just make sure the front end of it is easy to find. Make sure that we're at least giving a good first impression to developers who walk in. Make sure that the person at the front door of the zoning office or the community development office can answer questions routinely or can turn to the person who can. It can't be the person at the desk doesn't really know a lot and the person who does is in the field 34 hours a week. And she can't get a hold of him, he can't get a hold of her, and the developers just stand like, I don't know what to do, right? Frontline staff get, when we make a code update, let's teach the frontline staff about the code update. So the developer comes in and says, hey, I heard you guys just changed. Yep, I got an info sheet on that here, right? Review those forms regularly. If you have zoning forms that look like they were run off on a mimeograph machine, chuck them. Hire an intern to type them out on a computer and have them printable and PDFable and on your website. Those forms and schedules, they need to be updated once a year. You need to be looking at those things once a year. And again, these are only related to affordable housing, but if you're trying to attract affordable housing as one of your development priorities, make sure the affordable housing developer has access to these tools. And then Lance talked about this morning, the use of a project review committee, a PRC. It's an initial almost in view that before it lands on the zoning board plate, somebody with understanding of the full development process has seen it. So that when you all get the full package, when you all get the package is full, it's complete, it's understandable. Somebody has looked at this and makes me feel good about it. Project logistics are all sorted out. And that's critical for any project, but particularly affordable housing. So things you could do today, right now, when you walk out of here to support an affordable housing program. Look at your comprehensive. Understand how affordable housing or housing strategy generally fits into your comprehensive plan. If you can't figure it out, if you all are people who are in the community development profession, if you can't figure out, you can't get to what housing or affordable housing means in this comp plan, stop. Call the supervisor, call the administrator, call whomever and say, help me understand what we're after here. Before you put me in a job, I need to understand what my job is. And so the connection between affordable housing and your community's comprehensive plan. If you don't have a comprehensive plan, I'll send you to a podcast that'll teach you a really abbreviated, inexpensive way to at least get a framework, a strategic framework to help you move in a strategic way. Go home tonight, crack out that 4,000-page Canandaigua code book and start flipping through it. And any place you've dog-eared over the years that's been a pain in your tuchus since the day you sat down on the planning board, call Doug and say, I've had enough of this. We've been wrestling with this piece of code and how it bangs up against housing projects for years. If you can think of a crummy project that got by you because, hey man, it's just what the zoning code says. Remember it, find the piece of the zoning code that let it get by you and go see Sean or Doug and say, we got to close this gap here. We got to figure this out. Make sure that codes are lined up with the vision, that they make sense. And then another easy one, go to hopefully inside your development office with all those plastic envelopes that have got all the forms in them. pull one of each. And sit down with it over the weekend. I know everybody's excited about doing this. It's gonna be 80 degrees and sunny on Sunday. You don't want to be outside at all. You'll get a sunburn. Sit in your room and just go over zoning forms. Make sure that make sure that if you were a walk off the street developer, you could get a project through the zoning form. Since Sean is here, we got to stop talking about her. And you can get me anytime, day or night. Office number, so at night I won't be there, but you can call it. And you can seriously email me anytime. We do have a podcast once a week, just 15 or 20 minutes. And we cover a lot of the stuff we talked about here today. I'm big, like 3 easy things you can do right now kind of podcast guy. So check me out there. But if you have a housing question or any other community development question, I'm always available. So I talked too long, didn't give you a chance to ask any questions, so I apologize for that, but definitely if you have any, I appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.